Thank you so much. I'm going to need everybody to stand up for a minute. I'm tempted to say just sit back down, but I won't do that, but that would be funny. So we're going to do a little task together. Are you ready for this task? Okay. Ready? Clap once. Stomp with your right foot. Clap once. Stomp with your left foot. Ready? At the same speed, clap 3 times. Five times. Put your right hand out, and when I count to 3, 1, 2, 3, let's go. Say it again. Let's go. Louder. Let's go. Why did you all just do that? We're not going anywhere. You can sit. You have just done a ritual. And we know it's a ritual because if I went outside on the street and asked someone to do that, they would say, absolutely not, that's insane. But the humans decided, I think like a couple thousand years ago, that when there is a person up at the front, especially if they're slightly higher than the other people, then we're supposed to do what that person tells us to do, no matter how silly it might be. So that's kind of the bad version of rituals. The good version of rituals actually is that you all just did something together, and now you're going to share that actually forever. And it turns out that when groups of people do rituals together, it has some really interesting psychological effects. So rituals aren't necessarily good or bad, but they're powerful, and they really seem to have bizarre, sometimes, effects on our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So I'm going to talk about a few ways that we've examined the influence of rituals in human life. And as you'll see, it's all over the place in human life. I'll only talk about some of the research that we've done. But just to the first point of groups doing this thing, so we wondered, groups do rituals all the time. We wondered, does it actually really help, or is it just something that the humans think is fun and then it doesn't do anything? So we did some experiments. We brought people into our lab and we put them in teams. In some teams we say, get to know each other. And other teams we say, do a ritual together. And we actually did the ritual that you just did. And then we send them out to do a scavenger hunt task that's really time constrained, and they have to run around and they fight a lot during it because they don't know what to do. So we make them do things like this. You have to go take a picture of your team pretending to be strong in front of the university gym. Here's some students doing that. How do you show you're strong is a little unclear. They went with a biblical kind of thing, I think. Here's another one, looking scared in the tunnels at Harvard Business School. There they are looking scared. We have a bunch of these tasks. They have to keep taking pictures of themselves all over campus. And what we find is that the teams that got to know each other, they do okay, but the teams that did a ritual actually do better. And the reason they do better on the task, it turns out, is because they like each other more and they coordinate better what they're going to do. Now, the effects aren't huge, of course, but just the idea of clapping and stomping together brings them together more closely. And we even found, usually when people come into our lab to do experiments, they don't have a very good time because they're typing things for an hour and then they leave. One of the teams, after they did this, that did the ritual, came up to my student and said, are we allowed to get each other's email addresses because we want to get together again? Random strangers who we made do this, suddenly they were like best friends for the rest of their lives. Again, rituals are all over the place. If you just look for images, here's a particularly evocative one. That's some of my fellow professors at the Harvard Business School. Before we teach, we usually do that. Here's one that I like a lot. This is from Walmart. Quick piece of advice, you should never, ever in your life go up to another person under any circumstances and say, give me a squiggly. Just don't do that ever. So what is a ritual? We found that there's group ones, there's individual ones, there's all kinds of ways that people build rituals into their lives. One way to think about them is, it's all the things we do that aren't the thing itself. So with Walmart, for example, what they want is good customer service. Making a squiggly thing, they do that in the morning, by the way, at Walmart. Making a squiggly thing isn't actually serving a customer, but it's another behavior that you think will then help the eventual task. Just like the group ritual you did, that's not actually helping you with the team task you'll do after, but the belief is that when you do these kinds of behaviors, they will help these kinds of behaviors over here. The other way to think about what a ritual is how do they compare to routines or habits? So you might have a morning routine that you do every morning. And it could be a routine or it could be a ritual. And here's how you know. So we did some surveys and we asked people their morning routines. Some of them are very elaborate, by the way. It turns out that there's two types of people in the world: people who brush their teeth and then take a shower, or people who take a shower and then brush their teeth. And people who do the opposite are like, how can you do that? Your mouth is so gross, don't you need to brush it first? There's these really strong theories about what's correct. It's a routine or a habit if you're a brush your teeth first and then shower, and I say, can you do it differently? You say, sure. Because it's two tasks that need to get done. It doesn't matter what order. It's closer to a ritual if I tell you, can you do them in the reverse order? And not only do you feel weird doing them in a reverse order, but now you feel weird all day because your whole thing was messed up the entire morning. And you can think about the difference between those. Some things you're happy to shift them around, and other things feel odd when you shift them around. That usually means it's closer to you. It's something else is going on than the things. There's some other psychology that's happening. So we wanted to look across many, many domains at how rituals work. One of the examples that really struck me was in a book by Drew Faust, who's the president of Harvard. This is a book of hers from a while ago. She talked about death in the American Civil War. And what happened in the Civil War, of course, is that most Americans lost a very close family member, or really all Americans lost someone pretty close to them. And she looked at how the culture dealt with that level of grief. And in the American South, at least, there were very interesting clothing rituals that happen. And we know these, and I'll show you some examples. But when somebody dies who's close to you, you wear black for a while. But what happened there was you would wear black for a while, and then you would wear gray for a while, and then you could kind of wear gray but add a little lavender, and then after that you could kind of go back to dressing the way you used to. What was super interesting, though, is that the closeness of your relationship with the person who died determined how long those periods were. So like, if I'm making these numbers up, but if your husband died, it was a year of black, a year of gray, a year of lavender. But if it was like your third cousin's friend, it was like an hour for each one of those or something like that. And what I loved about this is that if you think about it, first off, it's a social thing. So now I know how to interact with you because I can see that you've switched to gray. So I know that you might be in a different place than you were before. And it actually even could serve as a signal to yourself. So if you're thinking, how am I doing with this loss I've suffered? You could actually literally look down and say, well, I must be doing a little bit better because my clothes have changed from where they were before. So we went and looked actually not just in America, but all over the world at grieving and mourning rituals. It turns out every culture we could find has them, historically and currently. There may be some that don't, but they're so ubiquitous. But what's so interesting is they're all over the place. And often they're completely opposite to each other. So in some cultures, for example, you must wear black when someone dies at the funeral. If you wore white, you'd be a crazy person. In other cultures, of course, you must wear white. And if you were to wear black, it would be a sign of disrespect. Some cultures, when somebody dies, you open all the windows. In other cultures, you cover all the windows. In some cultures, you have to cry very close to the coffin. In others, that's seen as disrespectful, and you must remain silent. And my favorite one, because of my own personal situation here, is things with hair. So it turns out that in some cultures, when somebody dies, you shave all your hair off. And in other cultures, when somebody dies, you grow your hair. In Judaism, for example, males grow their hair for a period of time. Or you can take hair and keep it as a memento of the other person. So you can see somehow people are like, geez, I feel really badly. I have some hair. Let's do something with it at least to see if that'll make me feel better. For me particularly, I could either be in a state of deep mourning or perfectly fine. It's a little unclear how I'm doing right now. But we wondered, do these things really help, or are they just things that humans do? So we did some experiments where we asked people their experiences with loss to see if you perform a ritual, it actually does help you get over that feeling of loss. And one of the things that we thought might be happening is if you look at people who've suffered a loss, they typically feel out of control. A thing happened in the world that they didn't want, and now they feel that they've lost control over their lives a little bit. We wondered whether rituals that are kind of this controlled behavior might help you restore that sense of control, and maybe that might also help you feel better about the loss. So we surveyed a lot of people about losses they'd had in their lives, and I'll just show you a couple of examples of these. We asked, and you could think this for yourself, think back to someone you lost. One woman wrote, I used to play the song by Natalie Cole, I Miss You Like Crazy, and cry every time I heard it and thought of my mom. This woman wrote, I washed his car every week as he used to do. Her husband had passed away, had a car he loved, and she kept it and washed it in his memory. You can think about losing a significant other as well. So think back to somebody you broke up with or who broke up with you. What did you do after it happened? This person wrote, I wrote a letter expressing my feelings and I never mailed it. I destroyed the letter and let my painful feelings go. This is my favorite one. I looked for all the pictures we took together during the time we dated. I then, the same word, different person by the way, I destroyed them into small pieces, and this is the best, even the ones I really liked, and then burnt them in the park where we first kissed. That actually feels kind of good to me if I think back to, I wish I had done that. So we asked these people, how are you doing with the loss? And we also said, how's your sense of control? And it turns out that people who said they did rituals feel a little bit more in control and they feel a little bit better about the loss. Of course, what we'd love to do is see, can we randomly assign people to a loss and see if they feel better or worse and have them do rituals or not. It turns out so far we haven't been able to randomly assign people to break up with their current significant other. So we looked for another kind of loss that we could actually give you in the moment. And what we came up with actually was the idea of losing a lottery. So here's how this works, and you'll see why it's painful. We get 10 people to come in, and we say, some of you are going to have to fill out surveys for 2 hours. One of you, though, right now is going to win a lottery for $200, and you get to leave right now. And we even had everyone write what they would do with the $200 if they won it. And then it's real. So one person actually gets the $200 and runs out of the room screaming so happy, and everyone else is stuck with the surveys. What we do is some people just do the surveys, and other people do a little ritual. So we say to some people, draw a picture of how you're feeling. We give them pen and paper, sprinkle some salt on it, tear it into little pieces, and then count to 10 in your head. It's ridiculous, right? Like, why would that help you with the fact that you lost $200? And we took these, by the way, from the descriptions. The person who said, I tore the pictures up, we said, let's see if we tear things up if it helps. And it turns out that it does. It doesn't get you over the loss entirely, nor are rituals, of course, the only thing to do when you've experienced a loss in life. I certainly don't mean that. But it helps, actually. If you ask people how badly they feel about losing the money, they feel better after they can draw and tear their picture up than if they don't do anything at all. So this is kind of something bad happens, and then it gets you a little bit closer back to your baseline. But we also wondered about, well, what about at your baseline? Can rituals actually enhance your life? I study happiness as well. So we switched domains to the idea of rituals in consumption. Think of the barista at a coffee shop doing this elaborate thing to make your coffee, or a sommelier, letting the wine breathe and all this stuff. Very common in consumption that we think of rituals. We did some experiments where we wanted to see if rituals can also enhance our experience of eating. So the first thing we did was, and think of being in the experiment, we say, here's some chocolate, eat it. That's pretty great. That's a great day if somebody comes up to you and says, here, eat all this chocolate. And these people, we said, did you like it? And they said, yeah, I'm pretty happy, thanks for the chocolate. But other people, we did this. Break the chocolate bar in half inside the wrapper. Unwrap half. Eat that half. Unwrap the other half. Eat that half. Those people liked the chocolate more than the people who just got to eat it. And the coolest measure was, there's this great measure of how much you love something, and the word is savor. Savoring is when it's like you can't bear to swallow it. It's just in your mouth and you're just loving your life. And it turns out that these folks are more involved and engaged in the experience, and they actually savor the chocolate for longer than people who just eat the chocolate right out of the wrapper. So we said, okay, chocolate's great. It's good that we can get people to like chocolate, but it's pretty easy to get people to like chocolate. What about something that people don't like? And we thought of carrots. So can we have people actually do rituals around carrots, same kind of thing, do a ritual and then eat carrots? Will that make them like it more as well? And the answer is yes, actually. Even to the extent that if I have you do a ritual over time, so think if I did ritual, eat a carrot, ritual, eat a carrot, ritual, eat a carrot, so you're building it in, you start to get excited about the next carrot. Like once you finish the ritual, you're like, I can't wait for the carrot, I can't wait for the carrot. And then you're anticipating the carrot, and that's partly why you enjoy it more. Okay, so those are just a couple of domains that we've looked at. And one of the things that's interesting for us is that it's not the same psychological process in each of them. It's not that rituals make us feel X, and therefore we do Y. Rituals sometimes in teams make us like each other more. With mourning, they make us feel more in control and better about the loss. With consuming, they engage us a bit more. So they're really multi-purpose. And we've done other domains as well. So for example, if you're nervous before you perform, many performers do pre-performance rituals. It turns out those help you a lot. We had a study where we made people sing a karaoke version of Don't Stop Believing by Journey. If you are a singer, you know that song is impossible for all humans to sing. Some people get to do a ritual before they do that, and some don't. those who get to do the ritual feel calmer and they perform a little bit better. Another domain we've looked at is celebrating. So families that report having rituals around the holidays are both closer as families and they're more likely to keep getting back together. It's like the ritual gives them something to do instead of staring at each other and starting to argue. The ritual helps you say, we can get through this day together. And the last one that I'll mention is this idea of performance and self-regulation and self-control. If you're trying to diet or exercise or things like that, those are habits, but one thing that we've shown can help is if you engage in a ritual and build the ritual into the habit, it can help you persist a little bit more. So I'm not going to make you do this again. I focus mainly on the positive things about rituals. They're not always positive. So in another line of research that we've done, we have people do the same ritual as before, and then some people do the one you did. So imagine I had this half of the room do this one, and we all did it together, and we were getting excited and shouting. But then at the last step, these people over here did that instead. What happens is both sides of the room look at each other like, you idiot, because you're doing it wrong, right? Because my way is the good way, and now you've done it wrong. And rituals can actually increase hostility between groups as well. When you're doing it differently, you're doing it wrong, my way is right, and I don't like you as much. So I started out by saying sort of what is a ritual. If you think about all the domains of life where these happen, and this is just some of them, if you think about what you're doing right now and over this weekend, it's a constant ritual, and then you go to lunch at a prescribed time and talk about the weather and then come back. Almost everything in life starts to feel like a ritual after a little while. So I'll just end by asking you this question is, what isn't a ritual? Thank you very much.